At the last minute, Annie couldn't go. She was invaded by one of those 24-hour flu bugs that sent her to bed with a fever, moaning about the fact that she'd have to break her date with handsome Harry Arnold that night. We call him Handsome Harry because he's actually handsome, but he's also a nice guy, cool, and doesn't treat me like Annie's kid brother, which I am, but like a regular person. Anyway, I had to go to lawn rest alone that afternoon, but first of all, I had to stand inspection. My mother lined me up against the wall. She stood there like a one-man firing squad, which is kind of funny because she's not like a man at all. She's very feminine, and we have this great relationship. I feel as if she really likes me. I realize that sounds strange, but I know guys whose mothers love them and cook special stuff for them and worry about them, but there's all something missing in their relationship. Anyway, she frowned and started the routine. That hair, she said, then admitted, well, at least you combed it. I sighed. I've discovered that it's better to sigh than argue. And that mustache. She shook her head. I still say a 17-year-old has no business wearing a mustache. It's an experiment, I say. I just wanted to see if I could grow one. To tell the truth, I'd proved my point about being able to grow a decent mustache, but I also had learned to like it. It's costing you money, Mike, she said. I know. The money was a reference to the movies. The downtown cinema has a special Friday night offer. Half-price admission for high school couples 17 or younger. But the woman in the box office took one look at my mustache and charged me full price. Even when I showed her my driver's license, she charged full admission for Cindy's ticket too, which left me practically broken, unable to take Cindy out for a hamburger with the crowd afterward. That didn't help matters because Cindy has been getting impatient recently about things like the fact I don't own my own car and I have to concentrate on my studies if I want to win that college scholarship, for instance. Cindy wasn't exactly crazy about the mustache either. Now it was my mother's turn to sigh. Look, I said to cheer her up. I'm thinking about shaving it off even though I wasn't. Another discovery. You can build a way of life on postponement. Your grandmother probably won't even recognize you, she said, and I saw the shadow fall across her face. Let me tell you what the visit to Lawn Rest was all about. My grandmother is 73 years old. She is a resident, which is supposed to be a better word than patient, at the Lawn Rest nursing home. She used to make the greatest turkey dressing in the world and was a nut about baseball and could even quote batting averages for crying out loud. She always rooted for the losers. She was in love with the Mets until they started to win. Now she has arteriosclerosis, which the dictionary says is a chronic disease characterized by abnormal thickening and hardening of the arterial walls, which really means that she can't live at home anymore or even with us, and her memory has betrayed her as well as her body. She used to wander off and sometimes didn't recognize people. My mother visits her all the time, driving the 30 miles to Lawn Rest almost every day. Because Annie was at home for semester break from college, we decided to make a special Saturday visit. Now Annie was in bed, groaning theatrically. She's a drama major, but I told my mother I'd go anyway. I hadn't seen grandmother since she'd been admitted to Lawn Rest. Besides, the place is located on the Southwest Turnpike, which meant I could barrel along in my father's new Lee Mans. My ambition was to see the speedometer hit 75. Ordinarily, I use the old station wagon, which can barely stagger up to 50. Frankly, I wasn't too crazy about visiting a nursing home. They reminded me of hospitals, and hospitals turned me off. I mean, the smell of ether makes me nauseous, and I feel faint at the sight of blood. And as I approached Lawn Rest, which is a terrible cemetery kind of name to begin with, I was sorry I hadn't avoided the trip. Then I felt guilty about it. I'm loaded with guilt complexes, like driving a madman after promising my father to be careful. like sitting in the parking lot, looking at the nursing home with dread and thinking how I'd rather be with Cindy. Then I thought of all the Christmas and birthday gifts my grandmother had given me, and I got out of the car, guilty as usual. Inside, I was surprised by the lack of hospital smell, although there was another odor, or maybe the absence of an odor. The air was antiseptic sterile, as if there was no atmosphere at all, or I'd caught a cold suddenly and couldn't taste or smell. A nurse at the reception desk gave me directions. My grandmother was in East 3. I made my way down the tiled corridor and was glad to see that the walls were painted with cheerful colors like yellow and pink. A wheelchair suddenly shot around a corner, self-propelled by an old man, white-haired and toothless, who cackled merrily as he barely missed me. I jumped aside. Here I was, almost getting wiped out by a 2-mile-an-hour wheelchair after doing 75 on the pike. As I walked through the corridor seeking Eastleigh, I couldn't help glancing into the rooms, and it was like some kind of wax museum. All these figures in various stances and attitudes, sitting in bags or chairs, standing at windows, as if they were frozen forever in these postures. To tell the truth, I began to hurry because I was getting depressed. Finally, I saw a beautiful girl approaching, dressed in white, a nurse or an attendant, and I was so happy to see someone young, someone walking and acting normally, that I gave her a wide smile and a big hello. And I must have looked like kind of a nut. Anyway, she looked right through me as if I were a window, which is about par for the course whenever I meet beautiful girls. I finally found the room and saw my grandmother in bed. My grandmother looks like Ethel Barrymore. I never knew who Ethel Barrymore was until I saw a terrific movie, None But the Lonely Heart, on TV, starring Ethel Barrymore and Cary Grant. Both my grandmother and Ethel Barrymore have these great, craggy faces like the side of a mountain and wonderful voices like syrup being poured slowly. She was propped up in bed, pillows puffed behind her. Her hair had been combed out and fell upon her shoulders. For some reason, this flowy hair gave her an extra, almost girlish appearance despite its whiteness. She saw me and smiled. Her eyes lit up and her eyebrows arched as she reached out her hands to me in greeting. "Mike, Mike," she said, and I breathed a sigh of relief. This was one of her good days. My mother warned me that she might not know who I was at first. I took her hands in mine. They were fragile. I could actually feel her bones, as if it seemed they would break if I pressed too hard. Her skin was smooth, almost slippery, as if the years had worn away all the roughness, the way the wind wears away the surfaces of stones. "Mike, Mike, I didn't think you'd come," she said, so happy. And she was still Ethel Barrymore. That voice is like a caress. "I've been waiting all this time." Before I could reply, she looked away out the window. "See the birds. I've been watching them at the feeder. I love to see them come. Even the blue jays. The blue jays are like hawks. They take the food that the small birds should have. But the small birds, the chickadees, watch the blue jays and at least learn where the feeder is." She lapsed into silence, and I looked out the window. There was no feeder, no birds. There's only the parking lot and the sun glinting on the car windshields. She turned to me again, eyes bright, radiant, really. Or was it a medicine brightness? "Ah, Mike, you look so grand, so grand. Is that a new coat?" "Not really," I said. "I've been wearing my Uncle Jerry's old army fatigue jacket for months, practically living in it," my mother said. But she insisted I didn't wear my raincoat for the visit. It was about a year old, but looked new because I didn't wear it much. Nobody was wearing raincoats lately. "You always loved clothes, didn't you, Mike?" she said. I was beginning to feel uneasy because she regarded me with such intensity. Those bright eyes, I wondered. Are people in a place like this so lonesome, so abandoned, that they go wild when someone visits, or was she so happy because she was suddenly lucid and everything was sharp and clear? My mother had described those moments when my grandmother suddenly emerged from the fog that so often obscured her mind. I didn't know the answers, but it felt kind of spooky getting such an emotional welcome from her. "I remember the time you bought the new coat, the Chesterfield," she said, looking away again, as if watching the birds that weren't there. "The lovely coat with the velvet collar. Black it was, stylish. Remember that, Mike? It was hard times, but you could never resist the glitter. I was about to protest. I never heard of a Chesterfield for crying out loud, but I stopped. Be patient with her, my mother had said. Humor her, be gentle. We were interrupted by an attendant who pushed a wheeled cart into the room. Time for juices, dear, the woman said. She was standard, 40 or 50-year-old woman, glasses. Nothing hair, plump cheeks. Her manner was cheerful, but a businesslike kind of cheerfulness. I'd hate to be called dear by someone getting paid to do it. Orange or grape or cranberry, dear? Cranberry is good for the bones, you know. My grandmother ignored the interruption. She didn't even bother to answer, having turned away at the woman's arrival, as if angry about her appearance. The woman looked at me and winked. A conspiratorial kind of wink. It was kind of horrible. I didn't think people winked like that anymore. In fact, I hadn't seen a wink in years. She doesn't care much for juices, the woman said, talking to me as if my grandmother weren't even there. But she loves her coffee.